If you've ever wished you could plant a vegetable and harvest it year after year without, honestly, a whole lot of work, I have good news for you. Asparagus exists. Unlike tomatoes, peppers, or beans, a well-maintained asparagus patch can produce delicious spears for many, many years, even decades. Hi, I'm Brittany from Acre Roots, where we talk about growing a lot on a little bit of space, and today we are talking about our asparagus patch. I'll walk you guys through how we converted a patch of grass into a permanent in-ground bed for our asparagus, why we think it's worth it even in a small space, how you can take care of your asparagus patch to ensure that you get a lasting harvest for many, many years, and some tips on growing asparagus from scratch, including growing from crowns and growing from seed. The catch is that asparagus can require a little bit of patience from you after you plant it, but we'll walk through all of that in this video. So why add asparagus to your garden? Why dedicate a permanent spot in a smaller yard for something like asparagus? I saw someone on Instagram recently, they were talking about the things that they don't grow in their garden because it's not worth it for them. And one of them was asparagus because it has a shorter harvest window and it takes up so much space. And that's definitely valid, especially in a smaller space. But for us, it's definitely worth it because one, we love asparagus. We eat a lot of asparagus. Asparagus is also really easy to preserve. You can pickle it, you can make soups out of it, you can blanch it and freeze it. Like there's so much that you can do with asparagus. And we have 2 asparagus loving adults in our house and a child who will eat asparagus. So it's definitely worth it for us. I also feel like even though it takes up a lot of space and needs a permanent spot in your garden, it is one of the first things to start sprouting for the year. So when not a lot of other stuff is growing, asparagus is going to be growing, and that just kind of like gets me excited for the spring and summer of gardening ahead. And honestly, I don't even think the harvest window is that short. I think we harvested our asparagus for about 6 weeks this year. Now we did have like a peak of production of like 3 to 4 weeks, and then I started harvesting a little bit less as I noticed the plants were starting to like peter out for the season a little bit. But when we were harvesting, we got a ton. I was bringing in pounds of asparagus per day. One of the most common pieces of advice that you'll get about growing asparagus is that you should not grow it from seed. You should start with bare root crowns. And that's because bare root crowns are generally going to be like 1 to 2 years old. So it's going to put you ahead in the timeline compared to if you were to start your asparagus from seed. So I'm going to focus on bare root crowns first, but don't worry, I am going to talk about seeds toward the end of this video because if you are looking to save some money and you have a lot of patience, seeds are also a great way to go. So we started our asparagus patch with bare root crowns. We have Millennium asparagus here in Maryland Zone 7A. I believe we have 12 plants. We have 1 row right here and 1 row right here, and it's separated by a wood chip path. Now, choosing the location where you'll plant your asparagus is probably like the most important decision you'll make because once you plant it, you don't want to move it at all. Like the root systems, when you plant them, you'll see they kind of have like the crown in the middle, and then they have like little spidery things coming off of the crown. Those root systems get huge in the ground, and that's how the plant can come back year after year. So you want to choose a spot you're not going to move them, and you also want to choose a spot that has full sun. Asparagus is not going to grow super well in part sun. You want to choose full sun. So when we decided to plant asparagus, we just kind of like made an impulsive decision. One weekend my husband was like, I think I want to convert this grass area into an in-ground bed, and I was like, okay, let's do it. Let's plant asparagus there. So we converted this whole area. This was just a large grassy patch on the edge of our existing raised bed area. And we decided to put in 3 garden rows here and to put asparagus down 2 of them and then leave the 3rd for things like garlic and sweet potatoes and whatnot. This area gets really great light, but our in-ground soil is not the best here. So what we ended up doing, and I generally do not do this, I generally like no-till methods for gardening, but we did end up digging up a lot of these rows and mixing in a lot of soil conditioner and leaf compost just to break things up a little bit. That said, my asparagus has self-seeded itself all around the yard, and honestly, it has sprouted up in like our really crappy, heavy, rocky clay soil. And I've heard people say that they have had a lot of success planting asparagus in their gardens with soil like mine without doing any amending, so your mileage may vary on that. The best way to plant your asparagus is going to be to dig out that trench and create mounds roughly every like 1 to 1.5 feet apart. And when I did my perennial fruits and vegetables video, I did have someone comment and say that they have seen asparagus planted way closer together than what we have. And I would like to experiment with that sometime in the future with some of my little asparagus baby plants I'm getting, because if I can get things closer together and save more space and grow more, that's definitely what I want to be doing. But we ended up planting each of our crowns. It's kind of hard to see here because I have some sugar snap peas that I've thrown in here between the plants so I can maximize this use of space and help fix the nitrogen in the soil. But this bundle right here is a plant, this bundle right here is a plant, this bundle is a plant, this bundle of the plant. So you can see they're roughly about 1.5 feet apart. And when you make those little mounds in the trench, you can like drape the bare root crown over it and then just backfill everything with soil. Now, this is like very much a type A way to plant your asparagus. You probably do not have to be this careful, but we paid a lot of money for the crowns that we got, so we wanted to make sure that everything survived and thrived. Now, one of the biggest mistakes people make when growing asparagus for the first time is harvesting their asparagus too early, because growing asparagus does take a lot of patience, unfortunately, but it is worth the wait, I promise. So when you plant those bare root crowns, you'll get some little spears popping up. You want to just let them grow that first year. We planted ours like in early spring and we just let it grow. The second year, you're going to start seeing some asparagus spears pop up out of the ground. Asparagus is so silly when it grows. Like, it literally looks like someone's pranking you. Like the asparagus was just stuck down into the ground, because it doesn't need like a whole system to grow from. The asparagus shoots that we pick and eat are actually the immature form of the plant, and it can be really tempting to want to pick that first year. You can indulge yourself and pick just a couple spears, just a couple. Pick the biggest ones that pop out, but then you want to let it go for a whole nother year. Yes, a whole nother year. Let it grow to build up that strength, develop its root system, and then that following spring, you will be able to pick even more. So after like your third year, I would say you're probably safe to start picking with reckless abandon, picking however much you want without worrying about depleting the plant's energy too much. Because in those first couple years, it is absolutely critical that you let those spears grow up into ferns like what you see behind me, so the plant can build up its energy and be able to be resilient for decades to come. So I've talked a lot about ferns and letting ferns grow and letting asparagus fern out. You'll hear people talk about those types of things when they are talking about asparagus. And you may be wondering, like, that doesn't look like asparagus to me. What is that? This is what happens when you let an asparagus plant fern out. So right now we are in probably like the second week of June in Maryland Zone 7A. So we are toward the end of our asparagus harvesting season here, and I have started letting all of my plants fern out. Now, what I generally end up doing is doing this slowly. So I'll start letting a plant start to fern out if I notice that the spears are getting a little bit thinner. That means the plant's energy is starting to deplete, so I immediately stop picking and just let the plants start to fern out and get big and fluffy and messy looking. You may not want to do this, but you have to do this. This is essential for being able to get asparagus year after year. To keep things tidy, once I started getting lots of ferns, I'll come in here and I will stick in a bamboo stake like this, just a simple bamboo stake that we save and reuse every year. And then I'll use like garden clips or twine or something just to gently stake the ferns up to the bamboo so they aren't flopping around everywhere. If you're familiar with growing something like a tulip or a hyacinth or an allium, you know that it is essential to leave those leaves in place so that the plants can essentially use them as solar panels to recharge for next year's plants. So what it's doing is gathering up all of that energy in its leaves, sending it down to the plant's bulb and storing it up for next year's blooms. That's exactly what your ferns are doing with your asparagus. I generally leave my ferns up the entire growing season, not until it gets very cold or they start looking crappy. Like, I have one in here that's kind of starting to look brown. It might have snapped off somewhere. I'll yank that one out. It's not really a big deal, but I will generally leave up the vast majority of my ferns until the fall. So letting these plants fern out and stay for several months is going to go a long way in helping your patch get bigger and stronger over the years. And that's one thing I really like about growing asparagus. It's not like a heavy feeder type of plant. So I have things that I have to fertilize every year. With asparagus, I don't fertilize them. I don't fertilize them. All I do is let these fern solar panels recharge. Occasionally I will use my favorite Blue Planet Nutrients liquid kelp supplement if I like just happen to be over here fertilizing the garlic, or if I just have extra in my can, but it's not something that I like have on a schedule to do. The one thing that I do make sure I do every single year is in the spring, before everything starts to pop up, or just as the new spears are starting to pop up, I will come in here and I will spread out a fresh layer of leaf compost and maybe sprinkle in some worm castings too. So any kind of fresh compost is going to go a long way in adding new nutrients to the soil, kind of helping with that overall soil structure. And since I don't mulch the area the asparagus is growing in the summer, you can have some issues with weeds. I just try and come in here and pick, like I've got this weed that pops up in this area all the time. I come in here and just try and pick out any weeds before they get super big and go to seed. This is a common one I get all in here. We thankfully do not have much bindweed in this area of the yard, and I, knock on wood, am never going to see it spread here because it will be a nightmare to manage in the asparagus patch. As the plants get older, they can deal with more because, again, those root systems just become like indestructible. But for the first year or two, I do recommend doing some sort of mulching over your planting area in the fall. So the first year we planted these in the spring, let them grow all summer. In the fall, what I ended up doing was chopping down the ferns. They were much smaller than this, but late fall I chopped everything down, and then I actually just took leaves and put them in rows over the planting area, just for a little bit more insulation. You can use something like straw, you can use a traditional mulch. I just liked leaves because they're nice and soft, and I knew that they would decompose a little bit over the winter, and then in the spring I could just spread out a fresh layer of compost over top of the leaves. But after that first winter, I have honestly been kind of lazy. I did an accidental test where I tried to see if the plants would survive the winter because I just kind of forgot to mulch them, and then it got so late in the season that I was like, you know what, we're gonna see what lives over the winter here, and everything has lived over the winter. So I mentioned that crowns are probably the best way to go for a smaller backyard asparagus patch, but if you want to save a lot of money and you have a lot of patience, or you want to grow a ton of asparagus plants, then starting by seed is definitely a great way to go. So this is an example of what an asparagus plant looks like when it is a female and it is producing seeds. So you want to wait for these berries to get reddish brown and then break the seeds out of them, and the seeds should be black and firm when you harvest them. So you can see this plant here is absolutely covered in berries. So I don't want all of these to self-seed. So toward the end of the season, when these are turning red and brown, I'll probably come in here and snip off some of these areas just so that I can control the spread of this seed a little bit more. So I want to show you guys what that looks like in comparison to a male plant, because it's the female asparagus plants that produce the seeds. So this right here is a male plant. Doesn't have any berries or flowers or anything on it. It's just got these billowy ferns. I have heard people say that they prefer to have male plants because the female plants don't produce as many spears. Now, in theory, yes, that's probably correct, because when plants have to devote energy to flowering and producing seeds, they're taking that energy away from other things. But in my experience, I have not noticed a huge discrepancy in the amount of spears that the female and male plants are producing, because out of all of the crowns I got, I ended up with 2 female plants and the rest are male. So I'll watch that over the years. It's something that I'll monitor, and if eventually I have to replace some of the female plants, I will. But it is actually kind of cool to have a source of seeds for asparagus. I have given away so many asparagus seeds and so many asparagus starts to people just because once I have a female plant that's producing seeds, I can have asparagus seeds forever. If you do let your asparagus plants go to seed and self-seed and you don't do anything to control it, what you're probably going to end up with is a lot of plants that look like this around your garden. So these are tiny little asparagus plants that I dug up that had self-seeded themselves. My mom's asparagus patch came from plants that self-seeded themselves and then I just popped out of the ground and put into little containers. I took some that had self-seeded themselves this year and I moved them to the back of our yard around some of my fruit trees where I want to add some more perennial crops back there. And I'm fine with how long it's going to take because we have an established asparagus patch already. So starting from seed is a great option if you want to expand an asparagus patch and you are fine with waiting a little bit because you already have a nice source of asparagus to pull from. I have also started asparagus from seeds. So taking those seeds that you take out of the ripe berries, just popping them down into some soil just like you would start any other seed. And then I put them out here in my unheated greenhouse. You can put them under lights. You don't really need a heat mat or anything like that. Another option for starting asparagus seeds from seed that I have experimented with great success is through winter sowing. So if you're unfamiliar with winter sowing, I have a video about that as well. Not really the time of year to winter sow right now, but keep it in mind for next year because it is super duper convenient. You just cut a jug in half, cut some holes in the bottom, put some soil and your seeds in, tape it shut, and then leave the lid off so some moisture can get in there, and then set it outside all winter. I had great success germinating asparagus seeds that way, and it allowed me to contain the area where I was germinating them, not just like seeding all randomly all over my garden. And it also allowed me to not have to add something else to my list of seeds that I'm like stressing about remembering if I watered or not. And winter sowing things is just, it's an easier process for hardening them off and stuff like that. I think I touched on harvesting asparagus spears, size, time frame, and all that, but one thing I want to make sure that I highlight is when you start harvesting your asparagus, you want to break it off at the soil level when it's about like 6 to 8 inches long. The taller those spears get, they kind of start to get like seedier on the ends, and they will grow very quickly, especially if you have a lot of rain or like really good soil. So there were days when I would come out here and pick, and then like later on that day, I would pick again. It was just crazy. When it was like really producing, I would be picking constantly and just bringing bundles into my house to store in the fridge. And depending on the type of asparagus you have, again, we have Millennium asparagus, so the diameter is going to be probably like about like this. I don't know, is that an inch maybe? About an inch. If they start getting a little thinner, that is a sign that the plant is losing some energy and you want to back off of picking, especially if you're earlier in your time frame with your asparagus patch in terms of the number of years you've had it. And a tip for storing your asparagus, if you have more than you can eat at once, which we definitely did this year, you can take the asparagus, put it like upright, like it's in a bouquet, stick it in a glass or a bowl or something, and put a little bit of water in the bottom, and that will keep the asparagus nice and firm. It will stop it from getting like wilty and soft, and it will last for a lot longer in your fridge. We've kept asparagus in the fridge for a couple weeks if it's down in a cup with water in the bottom, just because it's almost like a green onion. You know how you could take a green onion and pop it in the water and it'll like keep it going, and asparagus won't start to regrow like green onions will. But it is definitely a nice tip for storing asparagus when you have an abundance of it. And I mentioned that I took some of the volunteers from this year and ended up planting them back here. These 3 plant protection thingies have asparagus in them. So this is what asparagus looks like when it is started from seed that year, and I've just been letting it grow. So no spears or anything, it just comes out of the ground as these tiny ferns. I will let these go all year this year, and then next year I will let them go again all year, and I won't pick anything. Even if it starts to look like I'm getting some spears, since it's starting from seed, it really needs that time to develop a little bit more. So these were just plants that self-seeded themselves in my garden, and I put them back here because I am allergic to wasting space in the garden, and we have converted this whole area back here from grass to areas where we have a bunch of native plants. We have some herbs back here. We have fruit trees and bushes. So I had a little sunny spot that I thought I could slot some asparagus into, and figured like worst case scenario, it doesn't work and it gets too crowded and I have to remove it in the future. But I also planted these a little bit closer together than that 18 inches we did up in our asparagus patch. So we'll see how that goes long term. So we were completely done for the year, but I ended up finding this little guy in one of the plants. So this is probably the asparagus spear that you were expecting to see in a video about asparagus, and it is what you would have seen if we were a little bit earlier in the season. So if you're looking to add something pretty low maintenance and pretty easy that will last you a long time in the garden, I highly recommend asparagus, even in smaller spaces. Promise you, it is worth it to devote an area. And as you saw in my patch, like I companion plant all the time. I plant other things between the asparagus. I had sugar snap peas in there early season between most of my asparagus plants. And in the summer, when the ferns shade things out, you can try things like greens that might need a little bit more protection from the summer sun and heat in between your ferns. You can just experiment with different things to make use of that space. Just remember, pick a sunny spot that you are willing to commit to for a long time when you plant your grounds. If you already grow asparagus, let me know how old your patch is in the comments. And if you are looking to plant asparagus, I hope that this video gives you the push you need to establish your patch this year, because we definitely do not regret it. Until my next video, happy planting.